Did you all feel lost there for a moment? You couldn't understand what was actually going on? For a moment in your life, you got to live like a deaf person. You couldn't actually access what was happening on stage. So I'll give you a bit of a rundown of what I said. It's my great pleasure to be here on the stage of TEDxPerth. And I asked the audience a question. Hands up if anyone knows any Auslan, which means Australian Sign Language, or if you know any other sign languages from around the world. Can I get a show of hands? Fabulous. I've had the privilege of growing up bilingual and bicultural. We all have the privilege of living in a democratic society. Some of us have had the privilege of living a relatively comfortable lifestyle. Some of us have the unearned privilege of being male. Some of us also have the unearned privilege of being white. For most of you in the audience, you also have another privilege. You have a hearing privilege. I know that you don't get up in the morning and say, phew, thank goodness I can hear today. However, it's true, you do have some advantages in life. As a deaf person, I am very much the same as you. I'm a second-year university student. Last year I bought my first home. I'm happily married. In truth, you and I are not exactly the same though. We are slightly different. And we're different because as a deaf person, I experience prejudices, attitudes and judgments from hearing people. And that's right, that's what we call you, hearing people. You're hearing, congratulations, you've all earned yourself a brand new identity today. You can call yourself a hearing person. So what does hearing privilege actually look like and what does it mean? There are many, many stories out there about barriers, but I'm here today on stage to give you my story and share with you my experience. When I go to the shops, I queue up in the line, and when I get to the register, I gesture for a pen and paper. And while I'm writing my request, the cashier deals with the second person or the third person, and I'm forced to wait my turn again. When I go to the doctor's office to see my GP, I'm sitting in the waiting room and the captions aren't on the TV, and I have to remind reception to put them on. More worryingly, there are more serious events. Last year, my husband and I were admitted to hospital with meningitis. It was a traumatic experience in itself. We nearly lost my husband. And on what was already a horrific experience, we had to deal with prejudices, attitudes and judgments from my husband's treatment team. To clarify, we were being treated by different teams. We were on different wards. He had his own team and I had my own team. My team were fantastic. They adapted their communication style to fit our needs. My husband's team did not do this though. We were harassed, bullied. Our use of sign language was mocked. They gestured that they had to speak and they had to write everything down, essentially saying that because we were deaf, we were somehow stupid. We were very fortunate to have a great team with my team. They were fantastic. They worked in partnership. They used their hearing privilege to go and speak to my husband's treatment team and explained that just because they're deaf, they're not stupid. They use a different communication style. They use Auslan, so that his treatment team needed to adapt their strategies. So imagine for just a moment if that was you in a foreign land where they speak a different language and you're in a hospital lying on the bed with treatment teams, doctors and nurses poking and prodding you and you not knowing what's going on. How would that make you feel? The pressure to keep smiling, be compliant, be nice, not make a fuss. It is brutal. Those two small examples that I gave to you earlier, they may seem small and insignificant, but when they occur day in and day out, it can really wear you down. So, is it any real surprise to find that deaf people experience a higher incidence of mental health issues compared to hearing people? And yet, there is still hope. There's still those good news stories. My university education hasn't been all smooth sailing. So when I've experienced barriers, I've had the support of the Student Guild, who have been fantastic, worked with me in partnership so that I can focus on my education. This semester, I actually had the most beautiful experience. I decided to study a linguistics unit. And the first day, it's the first class, so the teacher goes around the room and asks everyone to introduce themselves. And it got to me and I said, "Oh, I'm Drisana." And the teacher said, "That's fantastic, Drisana, but what is your sign name?" I was absolutely shocked, completely blown away that this teacher was asking me my sign name. Because for the past 25 years in my entire life, I have never ever had one teacher ask me what my sign name was. And it was amazing because that's part of my language and it's part of my culture. A sign name is really, really important. As I said, it's part of our culture and part of our community. A sign name isn't something that you can choose for yourself. The deaf community, deaf people, will suss you out based on your personality and your quirks and your traits, bestow upon you a sign name as a gift. So my sign name is Drisana. You might be wondering why that is. I smile a lot. And at the time, I had really long curly hair. So my sign name could be Smiley, curly hair, Drisana. When you all go home today, I want you to spend a moment in my shoes. Turn your TV on. However, turn the sound off. Have a go and see if you can understand what the people are saying. If you're struggling and you're fed up, put the captions on. There are other things you can do as well. Little things. When you go to your doctor's office and you're sitting in the waiting room, remind reception to put the captions on. Or if your workplace or organisation is making videos, promotional videos for example, remind them to use captions or an Auslan translation. Or better yet, learn some Auslan yourself, some basic Auslan, so that when you bump into me, you and I can have a conversation. Please don't look at me and feel good about yourself and leave the barriers in place with nothing unchanged. I do not need to be your inspiration. I already have to work twice as hard to achieve the same outcomes as you. I do not need your pat on the back. I want to be fully included in policies and discussions that directly affect me. Nothing about us without us. I want you to be my ally. Imagine if everyone here worked collaboratively in partnership, what we could actually achieve. We could celebrate every individual for who they are. My story is just a tiny piece of the struggle of every deaf person. We all need to look inward, look at our roles and our responsibilities in society in making it a better place for deaf people and for everyone. Thank you.